keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Our only hope today lies in our ability to recapture the revolutionary spirit and go out into a sometimes hostile world, declaring eternal hostility to poverty, racism, and militarism. Welcome, everybody. You're on the Anti-Media Radio Show. We're back January 18th, 2016. We're going to bring you a special show tonight on Martin Luther King Day, and we're going to be covering a bunch of other news. But we're happy to be back. Had a great show Wednesday, and as always, we're here live on UCY.tv 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, same place, same time. 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. I know it's a little late over there on the East Coast, but thank you to all those that are staying up late with us and listening in. We're going to be going over all kinds of different stories tonight, and of course, we're going to be talking about Martin Luther King and his awesome legacy and some of the stuff that we posted today on the Anti-Media regarding his life and the things that he had to go through to get his message out. Anyway, make sure you catch us 5 days a week, as I mentioned, and if you want to call in tonight, you can reach us at 718-717-8296. If you do wind up joining the call, make sure you keep your microphone on mute until we go to you based on your area code, and make sure your radio is muted in the background, and we'll get to you in order that you call in and when we're ready for you. But if you do wind up on the call, feel free to just stick around, enjoy the show, and when we come to you based on your area code, you're live. Anyway, we're joined tonight by an awesome panel. We got our longtime co-host, DB Schwartz, on the call. What's up, DB?
Not much, Nick. I'm just kind of taking the pulse of the city up here. BLM was doing a few things for MLK Day, and, you know, things are going to be progressing one way or another. Sometimes they have to happen in a way that's not expedient, but they are happening.
Yeah, bunch of actions today by the Black Lives Matter movement, other activists trying to shed light on the message of Martin Luther King. He had a very strong message of anti-racism and addressing the issue of inequality in the United States. And he also became a very strong peace advocate, anti-war advocate, and that ultimately is one of the things that helped lead to his assassination, in my opinion, and many other people feel the same way. And, you know, it's very, very complex life that Martin Luther King lived. So many different rumors about infidelity and all these other things, many of which is just stuff made up to try to just discredit the guy, and we're going to talk about that a little bit as well. But we're also joined tonight on the call by Claire Bernish. What's up, Claire?
Not much. It's a good day for once.
Yeah, it really has been a pretty decent day, and I mean, yeah, it's a Monday, and
we don't have to deal with competing with Monday Night Football now that the playoffs are on. So that's kind of a good thing, at least for us here on the Anti-Media Radio. Anyone calling in, I'm getting a few callers, but make sure that you keep your mic on mute. If your mic isn't muted up, I'm going to have to end the call. So just make sure your mic is on mute, the radio is on mute. And we'll get to you in order once we get through a few of the things that we want to go through tonight. DB, just a fair warning here. We're gonna talk about I'm gonna ask everyone on the panel tonight for their favorite Martin Luther King quotes. First off, the one I started with obviously is one of my favorites, but we're gonna start off with Claire Bernish. I know she has a few in mind. So Claire, what is your single favorite or a few of your favorite Martin Luther King quotes? Go ahead.
Well, I think that probably my most favorite is our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Because if nothing else, we need to always be vigilant and make sure that we stand up for justice and for things that are right no matter what. That is like the most important driving force. I know that that's kind of what guides me. So I think that's probably my favorite quote of his. But there are many.
There are so many. I mean, he's got a few things about riots and how, riots really derive from people not being heard and no one listening to what's going on. And I mean, there's just so many. One of the things that I want to one of the quotes I want to get out there before we go over to DB and see what his favorite quotes are here. Is the one about the empire, because Martin Luther King many times addressed the empire in his later work and his later speeches and things like that. And of course, his earlier stuff was mostly based on race relations and addressing the issue of racial inequity in the United States. But here's one of his quotes regarding American violence going on around the world. And, quote, "I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government." And, think about this. These quotes go back to, like, the 60s and things like that. And so we've been dealing with this American empire, and those that are regular listeners of the Anti-Media Radio, you'll know that we're constantly harping on this idea of the American empire and talking about the foreign policy, the geopolitics going on that our government is carrying out all around the world, whether it be in Latin America, the Middle East, Africa, Russia, the Far East, China, and all that. So many different conflicts that we have our hands in as U.S. taxpayers. We're the people that are sometimes unwillingly or unknowingly financing this whole program that we have going on. But we've got we've got involvement in over 100 different foreign conflicts around the world. It isn't just Iraq or Syria or anything like that. There's over 100 different conflicts that we're actively engaged in. Some of them on a very limited basis, maybe a few advisors, maybe we just have drones over countries in Africa and things like that. And in other places, we've got ground troops in Iraq and Syria and other more direct actions that are going on. And we have over 1,000 military installations around the world. This isn't some small, we're just peacekeeping around the world and stuff. No, this is probably in some people's opinions, and depending on your definitions, the United States has become one of the largest empires to ever exist, if not the single biggest. And so this is very, 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 very serious expenditure and a very serious adventurism all around the world. And there's so many different repercussions, blowback, and the creation of terrorism. And the creation of Western targets for these terrorists. I mean, America would never have to worry about being targeted by terrorists if it weren't for the fact that we're in all these other countries and all this kind of thing. And I think Martin Luther King was very much in understanding of that. And even before the terrorist threats and all, he was very much understanding of the downfalls of imperialism. and the amount of money it costs, the amount of lives that it costs, not only domestically, but also thinking about the victims of the imperialism, these countries that were invading, like Vietnam was the main one that Martin Luther King was addressing at that time. Vietnam was just this huge mess. And there was a story that we covered on the Anti-Media, I believe it was on Thursday or Wednesday of last week, regarding Daniel Ellsberg, who is a whistleblower of that era, that he basically recently came out and said that a lot of the top brass within the military already knew that the Vietnam War was going to fail. They knew that it wasn't going to work, but they went ahead and did it anyway. And, we're talking about over 100,000 American casualties in that war, not including all the people now, especially the veterans and the children of the veterans that are suffering from exposure to Agent Orange, and all the Vietnamese that also were exposed to Agent Orange, and all the war crimes that took place over there repeatedly over and over again. These guys already knew it was wrong, and that's why there was such a big opposition to the Vietnam War, and that was really one of the first wars where the media actually got to go and show what was going on. But following the Vietnam War, everything kind of changed. The media stopped covering these hostile actions. The government got kind of wise because of the reaction from the public. During the 60s was the last great anti-war movement. We really haven't seen a big one since. But the government got wise to these actions they were doing. First of all, now they don't let the media in there to show what's actually going on. For the most part, the media reports that come out nowadays are just from government talking points. Now there are still media embedded in those conflict zones, but they're pretty much forced to cover very limited scope of the actual conflict. Secondly, now they've changed it for the most part from the last time we had this big invasion action was in the Operation Iraqi Freedom, the Iraq War 2003. Now they don't do those kind of things. Now it's like covert warfare, arming rebels, regime change without really putting quote-unquote boots on the ground and actual invading forces. They send in the CIA, they send in the operatives, they send in the quote-unquote advisors.
And we haven't officially declared war since World War II. You can even look it up. Not even the Korean War, because that was the United Nations. So it's always been us declaring war on an ideology or a religion or an economic system, or sometimes just flat out to go get resources.
Yeah, political economic systems like communism, and that's what the Cold War was all about. It was a war against the idea of communism. And that pretty much gave the justification for all these different wars overseas. And, in many ways, because of that opposition, Martin Luther King was branded a communist, or at the very least, a communist sympathizer, because he was against all these wars that we were waging over this idea of communism. And so if you had a guy like Martin Luther King, and I wish we did in the modern era right now, he would be labeled a terrorist sympathizer, just like anyone in the UK that doesn't agree with the UK government bombing in Syria. The Prime Minister, David Cameron, basically said anyone that disagrees with us bombing Syria is a terrorist sympathizer. And this is the same kind of rhetoric and the same kind of propaganda that was used against Martin Luther King, and they've gotten really good at it. And so it was really easy for anyone that was really bought into that whole Red Scare propaganda of the Cold War to once the government came out and said, oh, well, Martin Luther King's a communist. And, a good percentage of the population automatically is just going to say, okay, I no longer am going to listen to anything this guy says. He's a communist, so screw him and whatever. He's just a communist agitator, and that's it. And so nowadays you have the new keyword, the new term they're using is a terrorist sympathizer. And that's how they try to brand anyone that's against the U.S. imperialism, Western imperialism, NATO, UN, all that stuff. It's like, okay.
And when they can't do that, they brand you as a conspiracy theorist to discredit anything you may say.
Exactly. So DB, I want to hear at least one of your favorite quotes from MLK.
Yeah, dude. The main thing I always remember about MLK and then also Malcolm X was they were just fearless. And so I always remember from back in school watching his final speech, and then he was assassinated the next day. But he was giving a speech at a temple at this Mason Temple church, and his quote said, "Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place, but I'm not concerned about that now. I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know that tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land, and I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord." And like the main thing with him was he was a Christian guy, but he was starting to bridge like all these different people together, even if they weren't Christian. And that was scaring the shit out of mostly the FBI and the CIA. Those guys were like, "Oh crap, our social controls are going to break down if all these people unite."
Yeah, that's the issue right there.
Great quote, man. Great quote. So we got a bunch of callers right now, and so I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go in order here of the people that have called in, and we're gonna go to them, and I'm gonna stick on this topic of MLK for a while here because he is such a huge figure and so many misconceptions out there. So first, we're gonna go to the caller from the 281 area code. And then after that, we're going to go to the other caller we have on the line. But caller from 281. We're talking about Martin Luther King. What do you want to? You have anything to add to this? You have a favorite Martin Luther King quote? What do you think? Okay, I'm dropping 281. The caller from 480. I know you're there because you're already talking. Anyway, same question to you. You're on the Anti-Media Live. What do you want to talk about MLK?
I just wanted to talk about how the government is actually leave behind the assassination. Basically, everybody believes that everybody believes that it was done by somebody else and everybody and all that. But it was basically done by the government. Mostly everybody that has opened their eyes and not sheeple no more. Everybody should know that it was done by the government. But there's still people that are brainwashed, continue to believe that it was still done by somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, there was a civil lawsuit filed in 1999 and concluded that there was definitely some wrongdoing done by the government. Now, it's not a full-on admission of the government saying, "Hey, look, yeah, we assassinated Martin Luther King. Deal with it." No, that's not exactly how it happened. But they admitted to neglect and that they did some things wrong, which eventually allowed for the assassination to happen. Now, of course, many people, including myself, are very skeptical of the official story of Martin Luther King and how he was assassinated and stuff like that. What do you think happened, actually?
I seriously just think the CIA was all behind it. They just planned the whole thing and they just killed him, to be honest, because because black people were mostly looked down, and they were always meant to be looked down. At least that was the plan of the white folk, and that's what the plan was. And to think that they're better, but in reality, we're all the same because we're all skin and flesh, just different look and different color.
Exactly, and the government went through a very great length to carry out this Vietnam War, and in my personal theory about the assassination of Martin Luther King, I think it goes back to his pivoting not away from the issue of race, but turning to a more inclusive message of anti-poverty and anti-war. In that time period, he started bringing in flocks and flocks of non-black people, of white people and Latinos and Asians, and a bunch of people started joining his movement to help oppose this war in Vietnam, and also because they were latching on to his message of how poverty is one of the greatest issues that we're facing in the United States. And we're going to go, even right now, it's even worse at this moment in time, in fact, as we've covered on the Anti-Media. We're going to go into that in a few minutes once we get through talking about Martin Luther King, because we're facing inequality and poverty now more than we've ever faced in the past as well. But in my opinion, I mean, it really came down to this really uniting movement that he was building up that was starting to provide a really legitimate criticism of the empire going on at the time, especially including the Vietnam War, is when they really felt threatened by his presence and by his message, because he was such a great communicator, such a great orator, his speeches, his quotes. I mean, you go online and Google Martin Luther King quotes, and you come up with like millions and millions of results. I mean, he was just had he was one of the greatest messengers of the modern era, and he was so good at delivering it that he just became such a great threat. And to me, I think if you look back at the Vietnam War, and then the amount of effort that went into creating that war, look at the Gulf of Tonkin, which is now pretty much a verified false flag. It's one of those conspiracy theories that becomes conspiracy fact. You know, the Vietnam War was started by a fake attack that they claimed the Vietnamese attacked a ship, and it didn't actually happen, and that's how they started the war. So, I mean, these guys went through great lengths to start up that war in Vietnam, and they weren't going to just sit around and wait and have some activists end all that war that they spent a lot of time, you know, creating. And they had to go lie to everybody. They had to create a deception. They had to create a false flag. I mean, you don't create a false flag and then sit back and have people just go ahead and ruin all that work that you did. So that to me is where the assassination came in, because he became a uniting figure rather than a polarizing figure. And I think you see the same kind of stuff happening right now with like the Black Lives Matter movement, where they've been branded as like a strictly racially motivated organization and movement, and many of the well-to-do white folks in the United States think of Black Lives Matter with a negative connotation, because of the propaganda that's out there perpetuated, whether it be by Fox News or the conservative media or the politicians, or, you know, whichever angle you want to look at. It has been morphed into a polarizing movement, and I think that's what the government really saw Martin Luther King as at the beginning. They were like, okay, well, you know, he's looking for civil rights for black people, and, you know, we can let him do that as long as we can scare all the white folks into thinking like, oh shit, this guy's a communist and he's gonna lead he's gonna lead some kind of black uprising, and all of us white folks have to be scared of it and all that. And I think that's why the government at the time was like, okay, we'll let this guy do what he's gonna do, because we can use that to polarize the country, keep them divided. Meanwhile, we continue on this war in Vietnam, and, you know, just continue out this empire, this imperial, you know, the imperial policies that they have going on. But when he shifted over to this new inclusive kind of movement that was including everyone that was not part of the ruling class, everyone that was poor, everyone that was being drafted into fighting these wars, which was, you know, I think Martin Luther King saw that as like the neo-slavery, you know, like he saw the draft as like the new version of slavery. And keep in mind, a bunch of minorities were being drafted and thrown on the front lines to go die in Vietnam.
Well, remember, you could buy your way into college at that point to get out of the draft, so only the poor were going.
Yeah, didn't Trump kind of buy his way out of the draft too?
Well, all you had to do is
yes, he did.
Yeah, have your parents pay for your college 4 years in advance. You don't have to go to class; you just have to go. Dude, you just went to college and then you didn't go to the draft.
Yep, yeah. It was simple as that.
Yes.
Only the rich can afford to stay alive. Basically, they think that they're the high up there just because of the money. And I mean, it's true. Yes, you have power since you have money. But the thing is that's why the government feared unity, because that's what Martin Luther King was starting to do, to unite all the people. And as he started to unite all the people, the government started getting scared, and so that's what I personally believe, that's why it followed his assassination.
Yeah, one thing a lot of people don't know about King was right before he passed, he was going to do this thing called the Poor People's Campaign, and he was going to do like basically what Black Lives Matter is doing now, blocking commerce, and what they're starting to morph into more of a militant, not violent, but a militant organization where they're disciplined and they coordinate their activities and they start blocking up commerce. And can you imagine if millions of people got involved back in 67, 68 and blocked up Washington, blocked up the eastern seaboard in the middle of a war? I mean, dude, he had to be taken out.
Yeah, he did.
Yep.
He did. And so, on the anti-media, anyone wanting to go over there and read along with us here, there's a great story by John Vibes from last year, November 13th, 2014. We published, because there was some breaking news about Martin Luther King, and it showed it was really a light being shown on the Operation COINTELPRO, which is obviously another quote-unquote conspiracy theory that came true. But the FBI was basically using their Operation COINTELPRO to try to convince... They tried to get Martin Luther King to kill himself. They tried to get him to commit suicide by sending him a bunch of these letters that were supposedly from supporters of his that had seen the light and said, oh, well, I was your supporter, but now I realize that you're actually an asshole and you're actually this and you're actually that. I'm not going to read the whole letter. There was a declassified letter that was obtained by the New York Times last year. We wrote about it, and the images are included over on the anti-media. The title of the article is called "Declassified Documents Show FBI Threats to Martin Luther King." But they basically were trying to get him to feel guilty about what his life was about, and they tried to get him to kill himself. And this kind of gives us a little bit of a window into the thinking of this machine, this empire, whatever you want to call it, the oligarchy, the government, whatever. I mean, this is what they do. They create falsehoods. They send fake letters, and nowadays I'm sure they send a bunch of fake emails. They send hate mail. They have trolls on the internet. I mean, I see them every day. I don't know which ones are real or fake, but I'm sure some of them are. But anyone that starts to create a kind of movement like Martin Luther King was doing is going to come on the radar of the government, and they're going to fall victim to the propaganda or the disinformation, or what has been called classically as COINTELPRO. Many people suspect that it's still ongoing, maybe under a different name. They're probably not calling it COINTELPRO anymore, but it's still going on. We know that there's sock puppets on social media. We know from Edward Snowden revelations that there's all these different programs going on. But
there's even AI now.
Yeah, and I'm sure they got bots out there doing the footwork now. They don't even have to have a bunch of dudes in a room on computers like going out there making comments. They probably have computer bots, that can go out and make all these comments and stuff. And that's something I don't doubt at all. But it really goes to show how much of a threat the FBI saw Martin Luther King as. They went through great lengths to try to censor his work and try to demonize him, paint him as some kind of communist and some kind of, at the time, keep in mind, communism was the hot button word. Nowadays it's terrorism or Islamic extremism or whatever. Back in those days, it was communism. It was the red threat. It was all the propaganda was built up against communism in order to keep the empire rolling and to keep our foreign policy moving and to have nobody questioning it. The thing was and the thing is that propaganda, it does work, but it only works for, I think, maybe the most brainwashed and maybe the most, the people with the least amount of intelligence, and the people that are actually paying attention to things, they see through it. And a guy like Martin Luther King comes along and he says things that people are already thinking, and people latch onto those messages, and that's what he was doing. And so therefore the FBI really tried their best to destroy his message and to destroy his credibility. First they tried to assassinate his character. When that failed, they actually assassinated him. And so these are the kind of things that we have to be wary of, and this is stuff that the U.S. government has done. As a caller mentioned, go ahead.
Sorry, I just think it really proves how much a threat unity is. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the divisiveness in activism right now makes me so angry, because, if we're all unified and we kind of ignore the little things that are differences, then we can really accomplish amazing things. And the government knows that. And that's why it seeks to divide and conquer. And it makes it so easy. People get so emotionally charged in the little details of what the differences are that they're willing to divide each other instead of, work towards unity like King was trying to get accomplished.
Exactly, and anyone paying attention to like the right wing media, and I'm talking about like beyond Fox News. I mean, Infowars has now kind of filled part of that niche, but there's like all these really awful conservative outlets out there that are really aggressive with their anti minority rhetoric and anti-black, anti-Muslim, anti-Latino rhetoric and stuff. They try to paint the Black Lives Matter movement as some kind of extremely militant, terroristic black organization that's out to destroy the way of life for regular working class white people, and therefore it turns a lot of what would be allies of the struggle of minorities, because they're all part of the working class. It turns them against the struggle of minorities, because they're fooled by this propaganda that tells them that they're going to just come and they're going to kill Whitey, and this is what the propaganda is out there telling people, and unfortunately a lot of people fall for it. But all this stuff is just divide and conquer tactics. I know personally many Black Lives Matter activists that aren't trying to kill white people. They're out just looking for legitimate recognition, legitimate justice for people that are non-white, and the statistics are there to prove that the justice system, does not treat minorities fairly, and the numbers and the data are there to prove, but the propaganda gets in the way. And Claire, as you were saying, I think that the reason why a lot of activism right now is pretty polarizing and divisive, it's because a lot of people are buying into that media narrative. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is that I think, and many people try to push this point out there, is that it is not a racial war or some kind of race war or civil war. It's really a class war, and that's the thing. I think one of the messages that it needs to be stronger out there is that it's most of the people in the working classes are kind of oppressed in the overall in the same way. Now some groups are worse off than others and are oppressed worse than others, but in the end, it's a working class kind of struggle here that we're dealing with. But the powers that be, the propagandists, the politicians, and the corporate interests as well, they're able to create this inner civil war between the working class. And I think that's where they find their success in dividing and conquering modern era activist movements. On that note, I want to shift over into one of the articles that we covered today on the anti-media, because this really just kind of validates the point that we're talking about right now, because it's kind of it's kind of revealing. And Claire, you wrote this article, and it's a great article, and it's called 62 people have more wealth than half of the world. Top 1% have more than all of us. I mean, this is like a mind-numbing figure. I mean, 62 people in the world. I mean, keep in mind, that's like not even a handful if you look at it on a scale. If you look at it like from a statistical standpoint, 62 people, I mean, more people die from their TVs falling on them every year than that. You know what I mean? And so 62 individuals have the same amount as the poorest other half of the entire world, which is like 3.6 billion people and growing. And so talking about class warfare, talking about, the struggle of the working class, and also talking about Martin Luther King's message, his anti-poverty message. I mean, we're coming to I would say, a peak in inequality here. And the middle class now, according to recent statistics, is now is shrinking so fast. I mean, it's now less than the middle class is no longer the majority in the United States. Everybody is basically becoming working class, living paycheck to paycheck, have like less than $1,000 in savings. Everyone's kind of falling into this boat, whether you're black, white, Latino, or Asian, or any other race or demographic out there. You're kind of falling into this working class kind of struggle. And I guess the message of Martin Luther King now is stronger. It should be ringing stronger than ever before, because I think to me the problem now is worse than ever. What do you think?
Yeah, this is insane to me. I had a hard time even grasping these figures. Like, okay, 62 individuals holding the same amount of wealth as 3.6 billion people, which is down from an already shocking figure as recently as 2010, which was 388 people who held that same amount of wealth. It's half the world. And it also says that 80 billionaires collectively hold $2 trillion. That's 80 people out of the whole entire world. This is, the point of this paper, this report, it was published by Oxfam International, who, fights inequality, like income inequality and poverty. And this is basically showing that we are losing the war on poverty, which, if you really want to call it a war, I hate those terminologies, but the title of their report is called An Economy for the 1%, which it really is, because if you look at the way that people with that much wealth manipulate law, it's been said that people buy politicians, but they don't buy politicians, they buy legislation, because anybody with that much money can affect whatever sort of legislation they want, including, tax loopholes and policies that they feel that they want passed in order to continue to gain more wealth. And one of the biggest problems is that they hide it in offshore accounts and other tax havens around the world. So all of this money is basically being hoarded by these people and not being invested or spent on anything worthwhile. And it's doing nothing to combat all the problems in the world, basically. This is often done at workers' expense, where safety and fire standards are just kind of ignored. We saw, the fire, I can't remember if it was Malaysia. There was a fire, last year, and a collapse of the building because safety standards weren't in place. I mean, this happens over and over and over again. It's because this money is just being increasingly pumped up to the top people, and that's it. And everybody else suffers as a result.
Yeah.
And by the way, this is not an attack on any sort of free market anything before anybody kind of goes into that mode. We're talking about people taking advantage of other people, aggressively using laws that they form, for their own advantage. This has nothing to do with the free market. This is all about cheating the system at the expense of everybody else.
Exactly. This is corptocracy. This is oligarchy, and you have to wonder, there's so many laws passed every year. I don't know the count on them this year, but there's thousands and thousands of new laws passed every year, that go into effect. And as we know from recent studies from universities, the United States is technically more of an oligarchy than it is a democracy, which basically means that the voters aren't having their voices heard. They vote and stuff, but the politicians get elected and they kind of do whatever the money tells them to do. So you have all these laws and stuff passed and all these reforms to the tax code and things like that. And, the United States has this notoriously huge tax code. I think if you piled it up by pages, it would probably come up to your chest or over your head, depending on how tall you are. But you got to keep in mind that the majority of these laws are being pushed through by special interest. We're not talking about any kind of system where it's the reason why 62 people are that rich and the rest of us are so poor is they're so much smarter than us, and that's just and everyone else is dumb. That's not what's going on. These rich people they've been having that money for a long time, and they use the government to seal their fate, and they seal our fate as being poor, and they seal their own fate as being rich by passing a bunch of regulations and laws and tax code and things like that give them an unfair advantage over everybody else. And all of us are kind of stuck working, 8, 10, 12, 15 hours a day, every single day, only to barely make it by with our paychecks. Meanwhile, 30% of it gets taken by taxes and all this other crap that's going on. And these guys that are stacking billions are able to just kind of get away with not paying any taxes because they've passed a bunch of laws and loopholes and legislation that allows them to get away with shielding their income in creative ways that are really hard to track and aren't very transparent. And it kind of leaves us holding the bag for them.
Like Warren Buffett, I believe, famously said that he pays less percentage of taxes than it was, I think, his cleaning lady, which is absolutely true. I mean, the tax law has been shifted so that these rich people will remain like uber rich. It's not even just kind of like they're wealthy people. These people are insanely rich, and they hire people who work round the clock, you know, basically making sure that that wealth stays in their hands and increases. I mean, that's how they thwart the laws. That's how they buy the policy. That's how they escape tax codes and find these tax havens. It's an insane system that they have going on, but it's their own system, and that's why our system is broken.
Yeah, I think General Electric, which is one of America's like biggest and oldest corporations that are, you know, still existing strongly, has like, I think it's something like over 2,000 people just 2,000 full-time employees working in its tax department. And so I think General Electric pays more money to their employees that work in the tax department than they pay in taxes. You know, and they actually in fact, GE actually really doesn't pay taxes. They get a bunch of money back because of all these like tax loopholes and green write-offs and subsidies and all these weird little laws that they've helped pass. I mean, when you got 2,000 people working your tax code, you come up with some creative ideas, and when you got a bunch of politicians in your pocket, you get a bunch of legislation passed that's going to benefit your company. And so GE can take all these profits they make, and then they can make a couple wind turbines, and then boom, they don't got to pay any taxes because of it. You know, and so these are the kind of creative loopholes that these companies create that really lays the burden upon the working people, and we got to pay all the taxes and finance all the wars and all these things. Meanwhile, the companies that go over there, Halliburton and all the contractors that go make all the billions of dollars from these wars and stuff, well, they make all that money, and then they shield all those profits. They don't pay many taxes on it, you know, and it's such a corrupted system. And that's why so many people are pretty much angry at the dealings that are going on right now. And that, to me, it explains the appeal of Bernie Sanders is this anger of people seeing that all their money is being taken away, but while all these corporations are kind of getting away with not paying anything, and people are getting really angry about it. But unfortunately, people are being misdirected and being misled about how to go about fixing it. DB, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, you know, he also announced today Larry David's his VP.
Imagine, man, one of the co-creators of Seinfeld. No, I mean it is really bad, and this is the exact same thing that Martin Luther King was talking about. I think these same corporate interests are the ones that really have an interest in getting the U.S. into all these wars. GE, while we're on the topic of GE, I mean, they make a bunch of the weapons systems, the software, the hardware.
Yeah, they make the jet aircraft engines, actually, in the city I'm in for the military.
Yeah, you know, and so they have an interest, and for a long time, GE was pretty much the people that also owned NBC, the media outlet. And so, of course, you have that conflict of interest. Now, supposedly, they've divested their control of NBC, but, you know, there's all these, like, shell corporations and things like that. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is GE probably still does control a lot of the agenda on NBC. And we all know NBC is a quote-unquote liberal news outlet. That also coincidentally is a huge warmongering news outlet, and coincidentally they were owned by GE for the longest time, which makes the bunch of the military equipment that is used in all these wars. I mean, you tell me what's going on over there. But you know, that's kind of what's been happening. Anyone that watched the Democratic debate over the weekend, I think it was on Saturday or Sunday. I don't know.
It was last night.
Okay, it was last night. Okay, I watched it this morning on YouTube. YouTube was like co-hosting it or whatever, and whatever. I watched it today on YouTube, or I listened to it. I didn't watch it. I listened to it while I was working. And it seemed to me like NBC was just totally going up to bat for Hillary Clinton. Anybody else see that?
Well, yeah, it was.
Yeah.
She's the select.
Oh, and she's the warmonger too. And so that, and we talk about the GE connection, the military-industrial complex connection there. Makes a lot of sense that Hillary Clinton would be their candidate, right? And I was listening to it, and I was just, it almost made me sick. But then after listening, and I got mad at first, and I was like, oh wait, no, I already know how these things work. This is how it works. But it seemed like NBC was just going up to bat for Hillary Clinton. They were just trying to pick apart every single thing that Bernie Sanders said. And keep in mind, I'm not a Bernie Sanders supporter, but when I see hypocrisy, when I see injustice like that, I gotta talk about it, man. I mean, they were totally attacking on the offense against Bernie Sanders. I mean, they would ask him a really tough question. He would answer it. They would interrupt him in the middle of answering his question. And then they'd try to counter his answer with something that he had said in the past or whatever. And then when it came to Hillary Clinton, it was just like, hey, Hillary Clinton, how are you going to impress young voters? And like that was their questioning. I mean, that was the line of questioning, while at the same time like being completely aggressive against Bernie Sanders. It was almost as if the NBC moderators were like part of the debate and they were actually on the side of Hillary Clinton. It was actually as if Hillary Clinton had 3 people in her corner while she was debating against Bernie Sanders, and 3 other people were helping her beat him, and
but he did get that awesome jab in, though. I will have to give him credit for the jab he gave her for accepting money from Goldman Sachs. I mean, that was just beautiful.
It was, and Goldman Sachs, that's a hot, that's one of the key words that people don't want, that people can't stand. Goldman Sachs it's like at the level of Monsanto. Goldman Sachs is one of those corporations where if you're in bed with them, it's like, we know that you're bad, And Hillary Clinton she took $600,000 from Goldman Sachs in 1 year in speaking fees alone, not even counting the funding that they're pumping into her campaign. And now those not familiar with Goldman Sachs, I mean, this is one of the worst banking cartels in the world. They basically control the European Union. They have like a huge amount of the Fed chairmen that are running the monetary system of the United States. They more or less run the monetary system of the European Union. Goldman Sachs is probably one of the single worst organizations on the entire planet. And Hillary Clinton is being bankrolled by them. Is this the candidate that people want to really vote for because she's a woman and she gives lip service to the women's rights movement? I mean, no, man. I mean, she's a fraud, and that's what Hillary Clinton is. I mean, Hillary Clinton is facing so many issues right now. We covered it last week on the Anti-Media. She could be indicted for what she did in Libya. She turned the other way in the midst of genocide. She allowed genocide to take place in Libya. I mean, she allowed the wholesale slaughter of black people in Libya just because she supported the geopolitical agenda of toppling the government of Muammar Gaddafi. I mean, this is just. I mean, how can a person like that run for political office? And at the same time, you got the debate that went off last night. NBC sitting there picking apart Bernie Sanders for little tiny things that he said here and there, like little stuff. And it's like, oh, Hillary Clinton turned the other way in the face of genocide. Oh, we're not going to talk about that. We're not going to mention Libya for the whole debate. We're not even going to mention it. You know what I mean? I mean, this is like just, oh my God, dude. If you can't see what's going on with this electoral system in the United States and just kind of just see it for what it is, as this huge farce and this huge just rigged game, I mean, you really got to be drinking the Kool-Aid at this point. I mean, I don't have any answers for you. It's so bad at this point that it's so obvious that if you're still buying into this and you're like, oh yeah, Hillary Clinton's awesome, she's all for women. If literally, if you think that you're voting for Hillary Clinton because she's all for women's rights, you need to get off the Kool-Aid and start actually paying attention, because this is really bad right now. It's really bad. We're about we're on the verge of putting a war criminal in charge of the United States before they even get in charge. I mean, we're used to electing presidents and then they become war criminals. I mean, look at Obama. He just like kind of oversaw the bombing of the Doctors Without Borders hospital in Afghanistan. I mean, his drone war kills 90% of the people that they're not targeting. He killed a 16-year-old boy in Yemen. He does extrajudicial killings without charging people, without giving them a trial or anything. I mean, those are bad enough as it is, but that's after he came into office. Hillary Clinton, she's a war criminal coming in. What do you think she's going to do when she gets elected?
They're just getting a jump start. They're getting ahead of themselves.
For real, they're like, hey, we're tired of waiting for these war criminals to become war criminals when they get become president. We got to get them in war criminals before they even start. That way we have more leverage over them. You know,
the future of women's lib is the women's draft.
Let's hope not, man. Let's hope not. You know, if the media were serious about being transparent and actually opposing corruption, Hillary Clinton would already be done. She'd be right now facing war crime trials. I mean, shit. If the laws were applied with a blind eye, like they're supposed to be, justice is supposed to be blind, right? Just like the imagery, the Lady Justice is a blind woman, a woman blindfolded holding a scale, right? And it's like justice, law, and all that is supposed to be applied blindly, no matter your stance, no matter your level of influence, no matter your connections. If justice were being applied blindly right now, Hillary Clinton could actually be facing a death sentence. She could be being hung at this point in time. Not that I advocate the death sentence or hanging people or anything like that, but let's face it, the death sentence is going on right now. People are being put to death all around the country. And if Hillary Clinton were being held to the level of justice that African Americans are facing in this country, Hillary Clinton would be on death row for what she's done. But instead, she's running for the highest office in the United States. And there's a good chance that she could actually win it. And that's a very scary prospect. Very scary. I mean, this to me is just, it blows my mind. It really does. It blows my mind that people are still buying into this stuff. I'm going to go back to our caller here. We only have a few minutes left. Caller from 601, you're still on the line. I mean, what do you think about this? All right, 601. Sorry, man, I'm going to have to drop you off. But, I mean, it's just so crazy to me, man. I really don't get it. It's so insane. And there's just so many different aspects of the government that is not representing us. You know, and now instead of like fooling us with Obama, I mean, it was like pretty cool because it was like, oh, guys, like, we're going to fool you. We're going to pretend like this guy actually gives a shit. We're going to put him in office, and you guys aren't going to really say much when he gets in because, you know, we're still going to pretend that he gives a shit. But now it's like Hillary Clinton, put her in. She's a war criminal. She's done a bunch of shit. Who cares? I mean, whatever. Put her in there. You guys don't care anyway. You know, it's to me, it's like that's what they think we're thinking. You know, it's like, damn, that's pretty bad.
Unfortunately, that's the truth of it, though, isn't it?
I mean, apparently, you know, it's got to that. You know, and they're relying on this media manufactured candidacy of Hillary and the Republican. I mean, I still can't figure out the Republican side of things. I don't think Trump is being. I don't think the establishment is trying to help Trump, but Trump's such a celebrity and people are so into their celebrity stuff that he's kind of unkillable at this point. I truly do think the establishment is still trying to egg Marco Rubio to win it, but it's just not happening because the people are just so done with that stuff. And as horrible as Trump is, and authoritarian as he is, and as extreme and just outrageous the shit that he says. I mean, he talks about Muslims being like our biggest problem, and we just talked about the fact that 62 people have more wealth than the other half of the poorest people in the world. I mean, no, obviously Islam is not the issue here, but Trump goes out there and sells that idea, and people buy it. You know, it's very, you know, to me, it's very telling, man. It is, man. People aren't really paying attention to the facts, but the media has tried to kill Trump. They tried to kill Bernie Sanders. They're not dying. So this is going to be a very interesting dynamic. The voting starts in 13 days or so. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, man. We're going to see a bunch of trickery probably going on by the media. We're probably going to see a bunch of allegations of vote tampering and voter fraud, and many of which will probably be unfounded, but some of which, I wouldn't doubt. We've seen it before in the past. We've seen it happen. And, the oligarchy rolls on. Anyway, Claire, you got a big story on the anti-media last week that we wanted to talk about tonight, because they're making some changes to the way that chemicals are controlled in the United States. And we know right now there's a bunch of issues environmentally going on. I mean, you got this nuclear, contamination going on in Missouri. You got this nuclear disaster still ongoing over near LA and the Simi Valley. You got this methane leak going on over in LA as well. I mean, LA is being inundated, but there's some major changes going on at the federal level with the control of chemicals. And you wrote a great article on this. What can you tell us about that?
Okay. Well, in 1976, there was the Toxic Substances Control Act that was meant to basically regulate very harmful substances such as lead and PDBAs and such. And they are trying to revise that, and under the guise of revising it for the good, they actually are, some of the authors of the bill, it appears there were electronic fingerprints that led back to the actual chemical companies. So this is basically, they are going to write into this legislation a bunch of different laws that will allow dangerous chemicals to be passed into the environment, and states will not have any rights to pass laws while the EPA is reviewing these chemicals to see if they're dangerous. So that, like in the case of BPA and plastic that everybody's heard about, states made regulations against those while the EPA is still reviewing it. Those laws would be illegal. So states would not be able to regulate, dangerous substances while the EPA still has it in their hands. This is like a huge, huge deal, and I can't even begin to explain everything that's going on with this, but it's incredibly frightening and will be a danger to everybody if it gets passed. So I would say everybody should probably take a look at this.
Yeah, and beyond this stuff that's going on in LA and then all this nuclear fallout, Missouri, I mean, shit, Flint, Michigan right now is a trending topic on social media. Everyone's talking about what's going on in Flint. Those that aren't aware of what's going on, the entire water supply in Flint, Michigan, has been contaminated by lead, and some people have said other chemicals as well. And so these kids have been drinking this lead for the past year and a half, and now they're starting to realize, oh shit, why do all the kids in Flint have elevated levels of lead in their blood? And we all know lead is kind of a cause of a bunch of mental issues and developmental issues and stuff like that. And as much of an issue we're having right now with the existing chemicals, I mean, glyphosate is contaminating pretty much everything from tampons to our popcorn. And that's a chemical that was just declared by the World Health Organization last year as a probable carcinogen. To the lead in Flint, to the methane and the radiation everywhere. I mean, all these environmental issues that are causing all these illnesses, cancer, developmental, mental issues, they're already bad enough as it is, and now Congress is going and they're moving to make it even worse. They're more or less passing the Obamacare, they're passing the Monsanto Protection Act of the chemical industry. And nobody's even talking about it. This stuff is just flying under the radar. This is not mainstream media news. There's not a debate being held by the public. This is a backdoor dealing that's being done in Congress by many of these politicians that are in the pocket of these major, huge chemical corporations. Dow, 3G, Monsanto, and all these other companies. They're all making these politicians do what they want, dude. And as much of a issue we already have, it's about to make it a lot worse. And the thing is, it's an Orwellian act called the Frank R. Laudenberg Chemical Safety for the 21st Century Act. Check it out on the Anti-Media. That's the end of the show. Peace out, everybody.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.